So, let's see what Google has to say about Unity CEO John Riccitiello. Oh. Okay, let's talk about this. When former Electronic Arts CEO John Riccitiello was appointed to be CEO of Unity Technologies in 2014, I had a lot of concerns about that, and those concerns have turned out to be well-founded. Unity releases after Unity 5 have progressively gone off the rails. Unity bungled the transition from the built-in pipeline to the scriptable render pipeline. To this day, the SRP structure isn't really documented, and it's led to a lot of fragmentation. Unity will just break things in any given release, and they'll remove features without providing any replacement. There's a long-standing joke among Unity developers that Unity provides two ways of doing everything. One of them's always in alpha, and the other is deprecated. It sometimes feels like there's nobody at Unity who's actually in charge of coordinating the development of the engine. It feels like Unity is constantly announcing fancy new features without ever actually finishing and stabilizing the features they've introduced. Unity's pretty much saturated the game engine market. So I guess in an abstract sense, it would make sense to try expanding into the automotive and television and movie production fields. But it doesn't make sense to try expanding into these other areas, often with extremely expensive purchases of other companies, when your game engine, which is your core competency, is on such a shaky foundation. Instead of buying Weta Digital, you should be expanding the Gagaia team and not canceling the project and laying everybody off. And I'm not even going to get into the ironSource merger here, because that would probably take its own video. Here, I want to talk about this interview and the reaction to it, because I don't think headlines like former EA CEO says devs who don't focus on microtransactions are the biggest effing idiots are completely accurate. If you are making games as an artistic exercise and aren't worried about making money with those games, then Riccitiello wasn't talking about you. But if you're going to try to make a living at game development and feed a family, then you need to think about a few things. To break this down a little further, I would like to talk about Jeff Vogel of Spiderweb Software. Jeff makes amazing games. Avernum 4 is the reason I turned in my tenure paperwork 3 weeks late. Fortunately, I still got tenure. Jeff makes old-school computer role-playing games, and he sells them in a very old-school way. You give him money, and he gives you the game, and then he leaves you alone to enjoy the game and doesn't bother you again. This is by far my preferred monetization method for games. I give you money, you give me the game, we go our separate ways. And if you go back and read the original PocketGamer.biz article, it's clear that Riccitiello wasn't talking about that business model. He wasn't talking about Spiderweb Software or Owlcat Games or Larian Studios, or any other developer that uses that model. He's specifically talking about the case where you have something like a free-to-play model and you're going to monetize with microtransactions. If that's the decision you've made, and you've decided that that is how you're going to try to feed your family, then yes, he's absolutely right. You should be thinking about that early in the design process. This is a point that the folks at Extra Credits made 10 years ago. I highly recommend that you check out their video on microtransactions called What Does Good Monetization Look Like, especially starting at the 6:15 mark. Now, of course, we could all hope that more mobile developers would take a chance and try just selling their game in a standard old-school model, but that's another discussion. So, as CodeMonkey pointed out, the point Riccitiello was trying to make wasn't wrong. But the way he made it, ooh boy. Part of being a highly paid CEO is that you should know better than to say things that will garner headlines like this. As someone who does love the Unity game engine and what it represents, or what it used to represent, I should say, or I should maybe say what it could represent again, I really hope John Riccitiello steps down soon. Unity deserves better leadership.